What if you could dig one garden bed, just once, and it would quietly water itself for the next 20 years? This is the forgotten way old gardeners designed their yards, and why almost no one does it anymore. The 20-year bed, soil, as reservoir. Most gardeners today are stuck in the same loop. You fight the hose all summer, watch your bill climb, and still see plants collapse the moment you miss a day. What if the problem is not you, but the way the soil is built? Old gardeners copied the forest. No one tills the woods, yet the ground stays cool and damp under fallen logs and leaves. They dug a trench, laid in half-rotten logs, branches, and twigs, then covered it with kitchen scraps, leaves, and a thick layer of soil. On top went mulch, whatever they had. Those buried logs turned into a sponge. In spring, they soaked up rain. In summer, roots reached down into that moist reservoir and drank. As the wood broke down, it fed the soil, turning hard dirt into something dark and crumbly. Once established, a bed like this might only need a few deep waterings a season. Modern gardens do the opposite. Shallow beds, bare soil, constant tilling, and hoses running every night. The ground never gets a chance to store anything. From the outside, a 20-year bed looks like laziness. In truth, it is a hidden tank. And once you see one bed holding its own water, you start wondering what happens when you raise that buried forest into a hill. The buried forest hill. Hugelkultur. Mounds. To most people, a heap of half-rotten logs looks like a mess. To old Central European gardeners, it was the start of a self-watering hill. On a dry, sloping patch of ground, they stacked fallen trunks, branches, and brush into a long mound. Coarse wood on the bottom, smaller sticks above, then turf, leaves, and finally good soil. Over time, that woody spine softened and sank, turning into a sponge threaded with roots and fungi. Each rainstorm soaked deep into the core instead of racing away downhill. In midsummer, when the lawn turned brittle, the inside of that hill stayed cool and damp. Plants on its shoulders reached down into the hidden storehouse, finding pockets of moisture and slow-release nutrients from the rotting wood. The taller the mound, the more water it held, like a standing cistern made of logs and leaf mold. Then came level lawns, mechanical tillers, and lumberboard raised beds. The idea of building a bed out of wood meant to rot fell out of fashion. But once you see a hill that quietly holds its own rain, you cannot unsee it. And if a simple mound can drink for months, what could a single shallow line in the right place do for a whole hillside? The rain line, swales on contour. Long before sprinkler heads and plastic pipes, farmers learned a quieter trick. They taught rain to slow down. Stand on a slope in a heavy storm, and you can feel the problem. Water races downhill, carving ruts, stealing soil, gone in minutes. A swale is just a gentle ditch, dug so every point along its bottom sits at the same height, on contour. When rain hits that line, it stops running, it spreads, it lingers. For a short time after a storm, the swale looks like a thin, muddy pond. Then it sinks. The water moves sideways and down, soaking the ground like a long, invisible sponge. Trees and shrubs planted just below the swale, on the downhill side of the small ridge it throws up, grow roots into that recharge band. Once they reach it, they drink from a deeper, cooler reservoir than the sun can easily steal. Across dry regions, farmers read the land with their eyes, not lasers, tracing these lines where water naturally paused. Below them, life flourished. Above them, the slopes stayed brittle. Today we rush rain into drains, then pay to pump water back uphill. But if a mere line can capture a storm, imagine what happens when you bury the water itself right at root level. If these first ideas are already changing how you see your own yard, tap like on this video so more people who are tired of dragging hoses can find it too. It tells YouTube this is worth showing to other gardeners. The clay pot grid, buried ollas. In some of the hottest, driest gardens on Earth, the irrigation system is almost invisible. No spray, no ticking timers, just silent clay pots buried to their shoulders, feeding the roots from below. An olla is an unglazed clay vessel set into the soil with only its neck showing. You fill it, cap the opening, and walk away. The clay walls are full of microscopic pores. Water does not gush, it whispers. It seeps outward only as fast as the surrounding soil dries, creating a moist halo underground. Roots sense that dampness and grow toward it, wrapping the pot in a living net. Because the water sits below the surface, the sun cannot steal it. Evaporation and runoff are almost nothing. In traditional gardens, a simple grid of these pots kept beans, corn, and squash alive through blistering spells between rains. One well-placed olla can water a ring of plants for several days. For generations, this was how you watered when rivers were far and wells were shallow. Then drilled wells, pressurized lines, and automatic systems made buried pots look quaint. Yet a single olla can quietly care for its own circle of plants. And if one pot can do that, what happens when the entire base of a bed becomes a hidden pool that feeds every root at once? The hidden reservoir. Wicking beds. Picture a raised bed that drinks from below while the sun beats down from above. No spraying leaves, no surface crust after every watering, just plants that stay remarkably calm in the heat. A wicking bed hides a shallow reservoir beneath the soil, lined so it holds water, sometimes filled with gravel, sometimes open. It is topped with a barrier and then a rich planting mix. A simple pipe lets you pour water straight into the base. From there, nature takes over. Through capillary action, moisture climbs upward, grain by grain, until it reaches the root zone. The surface can dry just enough to discourage weeds while the lower layers stay consistently moist. Instead of standing with a hose every evening, you fill that reservoir every few days, sometimes once a week. Plants never swing from bone dry to flooded. They sit in steady dampness, sending roots down to meet the rising water. Old bathtubs, stock tanks, even salvage barrels have become these quiet, self-feeding boxes. For busy gardeners, that can mean cutting watering trips in half or more. But wicking beds still rely on water carried from somewhere else. So, the next question is simple. If the bed can take care of its own roots, can the house itself take care of the trees just beyond the back door? The laundry orchard, graywater basins. In many old backyards, a strip of fruit trees stood green and steady below the back steps, even in the driest months. No one seemed to water them. Their secret was the house. Every time someone washed clothes or emptied a tub that used water had to go somewhere. In older rural homes, it often left through a simple pipe and spilled into a shallow basin or a series of pits. Those spots were filled with mulch, stones, or coarse soil, then ringed with trees and shrubs. The water soaked in quietly, filtered by earth and roots, instead of vanishing down a sewer line. This was graywater in its simplest form. Used water from sinks, baths, or laundry, never from toilets. To thrifty gardeners, it was too valuable to waste. Fruit trees, berry bushes, and hardy ornamentals learned to live on those gentle pulses from wash day. Their roots spread into the damp zone and found moisture even when the rest of the yard crackled. Detergents grew harsher, plumbing codes stricter, and that casual approach disappeared. Pipes went underground, out of sight and out of mind. Still, the principle remains hard to ignore. Water once, used twice. And if the drains inside the house can feed trees, what about the river that starts every time rain hits the roof? The roof in a barrel, rain cisterns, and gravity drip. Every time a storm rolls over a roof, a private river is born. You hear it in the roar of the gutters, see it pouring from the eaves. In most neighborhoods, that river heads straight for the street and disappears. A modest roof can shed thousands of gallons in a single heavy rain. Old gardeners did not let that go. They hung gutters and downspouts to guide the flow into barrels and stone cisterns tucked beside the house, cool and dim. When the sky cleared, a simple tap at the bottom and a length of hose turned stored rain into gentle gravity-fed irrigation. One good storm could keep a kitchen garden watered for weeks. No pump, no noise, just height doing the work. The barrel sat above the beds above the lowest plants, and water crept along a perforated hose in a slow, soaking trickle. As treated water arrived under pressure, it felt easy to ignore the sky and spin a faucet. Many cisterns were filled, broken, or left as odd concrete rings in the yard. Catch rain where it falls, though, and a pattern appears. Storing water is only half the story. How long it lasts depends on the ground and the plants you put in charge of guarding it. If one of these old tricks reminds you of something your grandparents did, tell me in the comments. I would love to hear which method you want to try first, or which one you are already secretly using. the living carpet, ground covers. The laziest mulch does not come in a bag. It creeps in on its own stems, knits itself together, and spends the whole summer shielding your soil from the sun. Bare dirt looks tidy for a week. Then a hard crust forms. Every watering pounds that surface, running off instead of soaking in. The sun bakes it, the wind scours it, and you are back out there with the hose again. Old cottage gardens let the ground stay dressed. Low growers like white clover, creeping thyme, and alpine strawberries spread into a living carpet between taller crops and along paths. Their leaves cast gentle shade on the soil, keeping it cooler and damp for longer. Their roots hold the ground like a net, so when rain falls, it slips between stems and leaves and seeps down instead of carving channels. Some of these carpets do double duty. Clover quietly feeds its neighbors with nitrogen. Aromatic herbs confuse pests. Strawberry runners turn empty spaces into dessert. All of them soften footprints, muffle raindrops, and slow that cycle of wet, bake, crack. A good ground cover turns weeding and watering into occasional chores instead of daily battles. And once you see what a few inches of green can do at your feet, you start to wonder what a whole canopy overhead might do for the rest of the garden. The shade ladder. Layered gardens and overstory trees. At midday in high summer, some gardens glare back like a skillet. Others feel cooler the instant you step into them, as if you had ducked underwater. The secret is not just which plants grow there, but how they stack. Older orchards and cottage plots rarely lived in a single flat layer. Fruit trees spread a loose umbrella of leaves. Beneath them grew smaller trees or tall shrubs, then berries, herbs, and a living ground cover hugging the soil. Each layer borrowed the light that slipped past the one above it. Under that green ceiling, the soil did not bake as quickly. The air slowed down. Harsh rays broke into dapple patterns on the earth. Water stayed in the ground longer, shaded from direct heat. When storms blew through, the upper branches took the beating, while the inner garden barely stirred. The place behaved less like a field and more like a small forest edge. In many old farmyards, vegetables tucked close to apple or plum trunks, thriving in those cool pockets. Once the overstory matured, the plants below needed far less backup from a hose. Today we often clear everything and plant full sun fence to fence, then fight the dryness. But in the hottest places, some gardeners flipped the script and sank their beds instead of raising them. The sunken squares, desert waffle gardens. In the harshest deserts, the toughest gardens do not rise above the ground at all. They disappear into a patchwork of shallow pits, each holding a tiny island of green while the surrounding sand bakes. In parts of the American Southwest, Pueblo and Zuni farmers carved the earth into small, sunken squares or rectangles, each edged with low ridges of packed soil. From above, it looked like a giant waffle laid over the desert floor. When rare rain came, water rushed across the surface, but those raised edges stopped it. Each pocket filled like a little basin, catching every drop it could, then letting the water sink slowly where the roots waited. By setting the garden down instead of up, they stole shelter from the world above. The walls of each pit broke the wind. The soil at the bottom sat a bit cooler, shaded by the ridges and later by the plants themselves. Corn, beans, squash, and chilies grew in those pockets, chasing the last of the stored moisture long after the surface dried. Modern raised beds in hot, dry places often fight gravity and climate both, shedding water off their sides and exposing more soil to sun and wind. Desert gardeners knew better. They cupped the land like a hand, and sometimes they lined the hand with stone. The stone blanket, rock mulch, and dew catchers. In some desert gardens, it looks as if plants are growing straight out of rubble. Squash vines spill over stones, young trees rise from circles of rock, and bare soil is hard to find. The rocks are not decoration. They are armor. Lift a stone that has sat on hot ground all day, and you will feel it. The soil underneath is cooler, darker, often slightly damp. The rock shaded that spot from the sun and broke the wind at ground level, slowing moisture loss. When rain or a sudden downpour comes, stones keep the drops from hammering the soil into a crust. Water trickles between them and sinks instead of racing away. At night, rocks release the heat they stored, and their surfaces can cool faster than the air. Moisture condenses on and under them as tiny beads that slip into the soil below. In the high deserts of the Southwest and on Mediterranean terraces, farmers ringed vines, trees, and vegetables with stone for exactly this reason. Bare earth dried to dust. Rock-covered beds stayed surprisingly moist. Today we spread decorative gravel over fabric and never plant into it at all. But once you see stone as a water tool, every rock becomes potential. And if waste from your yard can protect moisture, what about waste from your kitchen? If you know someone whose garden always seems to burn up in summer, share this video with them. One small idea might be the thing that finally saves their plants. The compost well. Keyhole beds in central baskets. Picture a garden bed you never get water directly. You do not drag a hose across it or miss the leaves. You just feed the middle and the whole circle keeps growing. On dry, windswept hills in parts of Africa, people built what we now call keyhole beds. From above, they look like a round pie with a slice missing, a narrow path leading into the center. At that heart sits a simple basket or well made from sticks, stones, or woven branches. Into it go vegetable peels, crushed eggshells, spoiled bits, even dish rinse water. Those scraps rot down in the central chimney. As they decompose, rain and graywater seep through, picking up nutrients and carrying them outward into the surrounding soil. The bed slopes gently away from the basket, so gravity tugs water and fertility through the root zone. Plants grow in a ring around this quiet core, reaching inward toward the damp, rich band. Instead of hauling waste to a compost pile and fresh water back to the bed, all the work collapses into one habit. Walk the path, feed the center. The bed waters and fertilizes itself from within. Shape becomes your ally. And once you learn to protect the middle, the next step is obvious. Guard the edges that hold everything in. The wild hedge, shelter belts, and hedgerows. On an open plain, you can hear the wind long before you feel it. It roars across bare fields, stealing topsoil and wringing moisture from every exposed inch. Step behind a thick line of trees and shrubs, and suddenly the world goes quiet. The air softens. The ground holds on to its water. Those lines were planted on purpose. Farmers set hedgerows and shelter belts along fence lines and field edges as living walls. A good shelter belt mixed tall trees, smaller trees, dense shrubs, and wildflowers tangled at their feet. When dry winds came, that rough leafy barrier broke their force. On the protected side, snow drifted deeper in winter and melted slowly into the soil. In summer, the breeze arrived gentler and cooler, and evaporation slowed. During the Dust Bowl years of the 1930s, long stretches of these windbreaks helped hold the Great Plains in place. On smaller farms, hedges around gardens created quiet pockets where beans and cabbages did not wilt as quickly under the same harsh sun that scoured the yard beyond. Over time, many of those shaggy borders were replaced with wire fences and neat lines of boards. But a hedge does more than mark where your property ends. It shapes the air, the light, and the soil inside its arms. And when you let those edges grow a little wild again, something else happens on its own. The self-sowing strip. Plants that replant themselves. The laziest gardens do not start from seed packets every spring. They wake up by themselves. Tiny seedlings appear where last year's plants dropped their seed, as if the soil remembered what to grow. Old gardeners knew which plants to trust with that job. They let a few lettuce heads bolt and send up feathery stalks. They let arugula, dill, and cilantro flower, buzzing with bees, then dry to rattling pods. Calendula and poppies scattered their seed like confetti. When wind and rain finally knocked the stems down, the seeds fell in quiet drifts along paths, at hedge feet, in shallow hollows where water liked to rest. By the next spring, the garden map had shifted. A line of volunteer greens followed a slight dip where moisture lingered. A fringe of flowers hugged the shaded side of a fence. Instead of forcing neat rows into every bed, gardeners read these patterns, thinning here, transplanting there, and leaving whole patches where the plants had clearly found a sweet spot. Self-sowers saved more than seed money. They saved effort and pointed out the most forgiving microclimates in the yard. When you add that kind of plant memory to deep beds, rain lines, shade, and stone, a new picture comes into focus. The lazy gardener's map, designing for decades, not days. Stand at the edge of a truly settled garden, and you can feel it. Nothing looks rushed. Paths curve with the land, beds tuck into pockets of shade and sun. And even in a dry spell, the plants do not seem to panic. Most of us start backwards. We buy plants first, then scramble to place and water them. Old gardeners and dryland farmers did the opposite. They watched the water. Where does rain pause? Where does it rush away? Where does dew linger longest in the morning? Then they drew their map around those answers, planning for their future, tired selves. On the high spots and slopes, they carved swales to slow storms. In the low spots, they sank waffle gardens and keyhole beds to hold every drop. Along the windy edge, they planted hedges. In the hottest, brightest patch, they set a young tree that would someday cast a wide, cool shadow. They buried wood beneath some beds, clay pots beneath others, and wrapped stones around trunks that would need every bit of captured moisture. The question shifted from, how will I water this every day? To, where can I put this so it hardly needs me at all? You do not have to rebuild everything at once. Start with one bed, one barrel, one tree. The garden you enjoy in 20 years begins with the lazy decisions you make this season. And if you want to keep learning how to make your garden do more of the work for you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Like this video if it sparked ideas for your own yard, and stick around. There is a lot more forgotten gardening wisdom we can bring back together.